All right. Let's get over to the farm. Mary, welcome back. I lost signal, probably for the better. Folks rejoin, and we will go over a bit. I apologize for... All right. Mary, Kayla, thanks for coming back. We're coming in first time, I'm not sure. I'm a little stressed right now. All right. Let's see if we can get connected to the Wi-Fi, get signal going, and then we'll get this all going, start over again. Oh, that was wild. Oh, let me see if we're connected to Wi-Fi again. Yes, we are. All right, let me get inside. Make a quick post to the group to let them know we're back. Whew. Oh man, what time is it? 30 minutes past. That frustrates me. All right, we will get rolling here in a second. Let me get into the group and post real quick. Let everybody know we're back on after that debacle, and we'll explain all that and get rolling. Part of me thought that was going to happen, but all right. I see some folks joining back in. If you guys could let me know if audio, and it's Friday the 13th, yeah. I thought I'd gotten past it, Keith, but here we are. Oh, trying to get back into the group to post real quick that we're back. Hey, Felicia. Yeah, it's been an interesting 40 minutes. Part of me thought, oh, if this goes really smooth, I'll get it done before. Did not happen. Okay, so we are live, and I think we're done going on and off. So I had a connection, it was working okay, and then I lost it at some point and couldn't get it back. So the first 30 minutes was me unloading a truck. So I ordered some more trays, and let me share this to group again. Okay. What are you feeding now? Oh, Matthew, worms to get them bigger. Thanks. Yes, Matt, that was an earlier question. And it looks like I missed some of the comments here. So let's reset. Let's set the table here and get rolling again. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. My name is Justin. I'm an admin in the Mealworm Farming Co-op group. And we are doing a Mealworms and More live event today. Unfortunately, I had a delivery show up early. They were supposed to be here between 3 and 4 this afternoon or tomorrow. And so they were early, and I tried to keep this thing going while unloading, and that did not work. I lost connection and all sorts of problems. So we will go for an hour from now. So it is currently 1 o'clock, 1:01 Central. We'll go for an hour to the top of the hour and talk about whatever we need to chat about regarding mealworms. So Matt had questions about selling for bait, and my feedback before I got cut off was that folks who you want to use it for fishing bait generally like the larger worms. They're easier to get on the hook. And a lot of times, just from like understanding your customer, a lot of times what they'll be looking for when they say mealworms is potentially giant mealworms. The ones that have either been treated with chemicals or some other magic to get them to grow really, really large. And those are generally easier to get on the hook, and that's why they try to get those. So my advice would be to provide some, Matthew, of what you have, of what your harvested mealworms are, what size they are, and see if, just give it to that person for free and say, try these out. Let me know what you think, if they're what you're looking for, that sort of thing. And that way it sparks the conversation and you can understand what it is they're looking for and what they might need. They might be perfectly fine with the size mealworms you've got. It just depends on what their experience is and what they're looking for. So a good way, though, to broach that conversation is to say, here, try these out for free, and it starts that conversation up. So I would probably go that route and then worry about, do I need them to be bigger or not, right? Because we don't know for sure yet. So I would just wait on that before you start changing anything. But from a feed perspective, I think Sue's going down the right path. What do you feed them now? Potentially giving them additional nutrients to plump them up a little bit. Could work. So I think that's what the avenue that Sue's going down there. Belazar, welcome. We're starting a little late with my unloading debacle, but that's done. We are in the farm. I'm going to head over, actually go into the insect room and check on things. I haven't been over here since yesterday. Had some things going on, so I haven't been in there yet. But if you guys have any questions, anything you want to see, anything you want to talk about or ask, keep things rolling. I need to refill the humidifier. Here, let me turn this around. You guys don't need to see me. Here, let's look at the farm. My humidifier is running and nothing's coming out, so that just tells me I need to refill that. No big deal. I will probably take the time and refill the big water container. We go through that every 2 weeks or so, I think has been the average lately. We're running a little dry because it's winter time, so there's that. But everything looks okay. Got the black soldier fly test run going there. Probably need to get some more moisture in there. But otherwise, it feels good in here. Temp's good. I checked that before I came over, but always good just to get in here and feel it. Katie, how do you clean out dead mealworms? How often do you clean out dead mealworms? So that's a good question. Let's see if we can find an example tray here. This will probably work good. So these, we harvested these late last week, I think. And what I like to do is I like to harvest them, or even if it's just a container with mealworms, dead mealworms, pupa, things like that, let them be for a little while. And what I mean by let them be is put them in a tray. These aren't too deep. They had a little bit of brain in there just to keep them moving around. But as you can see, they're not too deep. They're less, maybe like half an inch. And what will happen is their movement will start to collect the dead and the pupa for you. And so what I like to do is I'll just go in and grab handfuls, right? I'm not trying to pick out individual pupa here or individual dead ones because everything's kind of in this general area. So let me get a visual there. Like that right there is probably what I'm going to start grabbing. And what I'll do is I'll just physically grab a whole handful and I'll take out this entire section. And that gets the mealworms, the larva, or I'm sorry, the larva, yes, the pupa and the dead ones. And then I make a pupa bin out of that. That's the most efficient way I found, rather than removing individual, picking out individual dead ones. If you just kind of let them be, and depending on how the tray is tilted, how the air is flowing across the bin, I've seen them collect themselves on this side. I've seen them collect themselves off into a corner. It just kind of depends on how things are set in the farm. So that's generally how I clean out the dead ones right now. And I do that because I need lots of pupa, right? So what we'll do is we'll then take this, which is a conglomeration of pupa, larvae and dead ones, and we'll just make a pupation bin and then use our pupa sifter to collect all the pupa out of there. So, Whale, welcome. I hope I'm saying that right, Whale. If I'm not, please correct me. Production of mealworms per space. So, let me turn this back around. We are currently in 1,100 square feet, roughly. A little bit less because I have this grow tent that I use for experiments. It's a 32 square feet, so like 1,050 square feet. And we're producing 1 million mealworms a month, harvestable mealworms that we collect. We've got 1,100, 1,200 trays. I just added some that I got unloaded. I need to get in here, but that's what we're running on average right now. 1 million mealworms and 1,100 trays. And Velazar, we tried to do some math on that last time, and I can't remember where we left off there, of what that might have been per tray, if that was good, bad, or otherwise. But the goal is to get up to 2 million a month, so we can fit another 1,000 trays in here into the entire farm. So that means we'll have some that are, like dirty, need to be cleaned. We'll have some that we use for processing, but we'll have 2,100 trays in rotation, hopefully cranking out 2 million a month. Welcome back, Wally. We're here till the top of the hour now. I'll extend it a little bit because I was not planning on that. They were supposed to be here in the afternoon from 3 to 4, and so I tried to make it work, and that might have just made it worse. But how does light affect production of the beetles and worms? So light, so they are darkling beetles. They like the dark. They don't enjoy the light, but it doesn't hurt them. So we leave the lights off during the evening when we're not here, because the dark isn't going to hurt them, and we just turn the lights on whenever we're in here working. We'll turn them off otherwise. What I've found is that they'll try to get away from the light. It's not hurting them, but their natural instinct is to go away from the light. But I haven't noticed any particular problems now that we're in here frequently. When I did this as a side hobby, I would routinely go in and turn the lights or set them on a timer, so that on the days I wasn't there was some light, kind of showing up and going away. But I don't think that there was any detrimental impact either way, so shouldn't be a big deal. 1 million in kilograms, this is where we stopped. Yeah, 1 million, so I want to say that, is it 10,000? That's 2.2, roughly 2 pounds, roughly 1 kilogram, 10,000. So divide all that up. Katie, let me take a quick drink here. Katie, what do you use as a pupa sifter? What do you recommend someone on a smaller scale use? I've seen a tray from Space Coast Mealworms, as well as a metal one that fits into the green sifters. Everyone watching can comment what they use too. Yes, definitely. So if there's somebody out there that wants to reply on how you sift your pupa, lots of different ways. So from a smaller scale production, yes, Space Coast Mealworms does make a pupa sifter, smaller versions. I use the XL version, and I'm messing around with my cap. I don't need to do that, but let me go get the XL version. I've been using Scott's pupa sifter for years. I started with maybe the middle one, and then quickly just got into the large one. So let me turn this around, get the good light, and show you. So Scott's pupa sifter from Space Coast Mealworms. He laser cuts these and ships them. The only change I've made, Katie, is even for the smaller one, I think I would recommend this. What I found is the corners tended to get beat up and come apart pretty easily. And so you could see we re-glued this thing multiple times before I, decided to think with my brain a little bit, and I put reinforcement in the corners. And this is just let me get a different shot of it. That's just a piece of wood trim I had laying around, right? Like if you've got triangular trim, or even if it's square, I tried to not cut off very much of the slot there, but this does a really nice job of just reinforcing those corners. And since we've done that, this thing has been rock solid. I can say that at one point I broke one of the tines, slots, remaining part of the slot, and I utilized Scott, so he includes these, a few extra pieces of these in each kit, so that you could remove it, glue it back in, and get it squared away. He has these smaller, but alternatively, there are different sets of colander type things at various general stores. So in the U.S., like Dollar General, Dollar Tree, places like that, I would go and scope out to see if they have any, what are they used for, like pasta strainer type things. Those will work perfectly well. There we go, Sue. So search this group for kitchen spider. Thank you, Sue. Super cheap at Dollar Tree and sifts pupae really well. Perfect. Love it. Whale does it by hand. It'll work for a while, and then you'll get really tired of it. But yeah, if you're on a really small scale, like some folks will have a single container that like all they need is larvae for maybe one gecko or something. And so they'll use one container and then there's no need. If you've got multiple containers and you do want to separate out pupa, grabbing them by hand happens and works just fine. And then one of the smaller sifters, it's just an experimentation kind of thing, right? Like grab it from Dollar Tree, test it out, see how it works. Put my water down and walked right away from it. Mealworms are us. I see you out there. I didn't mention this at the beginning, but if anybody makes a comment or throws a question out or something and I don't acknowledge it, please let me know. Sometimes Facebook hides those from me. Katie, I'm doing it by hand now. I have 3 dough trays right now. I have space for 20. I feel I will need a larger sifter soon. Yep. Yeah, once you get to, so you've got 3 of the dough trays, like the dough proofing trays is what I'm assuming. The white guys. Those guys there might look familiar. So as you scale up and increase, you're on the right track thinking about what you're going to need to do on a larger production scale as your colony grows, and you need to, basically use the same amount of time, but be a little bit more efficient with the processes. So good job looking forward there. Mealworms are us. Love it. All right. I got some black soldier fly. I'm going to need to increase the moisture here. Yeah. All right. It's a little warm in here. For me, anyway. I'm dressed for colder weather because of the outside. I think we might be getting close to the end of the regional boxes with USPS. Might have to go through our last ones today. Let me go look at that. I think the last day to use those is the 22nd. Yeah, so this will be the last week for those. Then we go into different boxes. And we're shipping tomorrow. Today's a holiday. USPS is closed here in the US today. So no orders going out today. Everything will go out tomorrow. Donna, good to see you. I'm on a small scale, so would a grow tent be a good idea to keep the humidity level? Yes, so grow tent, basically what that's going to do, Donna, is build a microclimate, right? And so what folks use those grow tents for is indoor plant growth. And so you can kind of create whatever humidity you want in there with either a humidifier, dehumidifier, various different methods. A thing of water, misted, paper towels, things like that. But the grow tent will hold that humidity inside the tent. And so it's a good way, especially for folks that can't separate their colony from where they're, from their residence. It's not a good idea to have your mealworm colony, once it gets, above probably 3 to 10 trays. Once it gets above that, not a good idea to have that in a home, just from an allergy perspective. But the grow tent does a really good job of giving you the opportunity to hook that thing up with some ventilation, exhaust anything to the outside, and then that exhaust will also pull in good clean air, and it allows you to build that microclimate and adjust as your colony grows too. So I can't remember who it was, but they posted here recently that they started using a grow tent it wasn't full. The grow tent wasn't full, but they were going to grow into it. And what we chatted about was, like just starting very slowly and put the colony into that grow tent and just check and see how the temperature and the humidity fluctuates. As long as it doesn't drop and dip to, significantly low 10-20% level, just kind of see how it goes and adjust accordingly. Because once you get a colony of size inside of an environment, whether it's big or small, as long as if it fills that volume, they're going to build their own or create their own temperature, and they're also going to have different needs from a humidity perspective. So, very good question. The grow tent I have here is a 4 by 8, so 32 square feet, and then it's 8 feet tall. But I got that for testing and playing. I've seen folks use the 4x4 tent, and they come in like 6 foot, 8 foot, etc. Lots of different kinds. But find one that suits the space that you've got, and then you'll be able to use that for your mealworms. Wally. Ooh. I have a large isopod colony. I feed dead mealworms from my isopods. Oh, buy mealworms. Great protein source. I would imagine they would be fine for tropical fish as well, maybe even as a fish pond food as well. Very interesting. I like that. Yep, there's a comment there I didn't see. So, Wally, thank you for replying to that one. What do you do with the dead mealworms, beetles? Are they safe to feed to chickens? Yep, I would agree with Wally. As long as they're not like, a lot of times folks will have pupa that die off that get kind of squishy and gross. Anything that's wet and moist is potentially pathogenic, harboring pathogens. Dried stuff, generally speaking, isn't going to do as bad. But yeah, chickens, fish, things like that will still, it's like eating a dehydrated mealworm, except it's not a dehydrated mealworm, it's dead. So, still a good way to do that. When we cull our beetles, we actually take those beetles, we'll have live ones and dead ones mixed together, and we feed those to various chicken flocks here around us, and they eat up the dead ones just as well as the live ones. Matthew, do you need a lot of bedding in mealworms to keep them alive? I'm just starting, got like 2 or 3 inches of bedding for 1,000 worms. That's depending on the size of your tray, that might be a lot. Let me we'll take a look at one of the trays in the farm. Marie, do the different stages of cycle require different levels of humidity? Yes and no. So, yes, technically speaking, if you wanted to be immensely efficient, you could have different temperatures and humidities for each life stage. But as you can see from this room here, we've got everything all in one room. So we keep it we're right now running between 50 and 60% humidity, down from the previous 70, and things seem to be going okay, and all the life stages are doing all right. Too high of humidity and you'll have pupa die off. Experienced that myself while we were testing, but you could, like I said, if you wanted to get really efficient, you could take your beetles and put them in their own environment, right? Because they have slightly different needs than the rest, that sort of thing, but not mandatory at all. All right, so Matthew, let's take a look here. Let me grab one of these trays. This was swapped 2 weeks ago. And, quick PSA. I don't have a mask on. Well, let's talk about that real quick. Matthew, I'm going to hold you in suspense. I don't have a mask on, but it's not dusty right now. Everything's been exhausted. The room is good, so there's not a lot of particulates in the air that are going to cause me problems. So that Inkbird device coming in handy. All right, so this is for us, I think 1 scoop worth of bran. I want to say this is roughly 500 to 600 grams, and it is not 1 inch or 2 inches thick. What I would prefer to have in here, and what we're going to start doing, what I've noticed is that this isn't enough. So we probably need to double this, but even double, that's not going to be, it'll probably only be about 3/4 to 1 inch thick in this size tray. So 2 to 3, Matthew, you're not hurting anything. What I would say there, though, is be mindful as the larvae get bigger, they're going to be able to produce more heat. And in a tray that's thick, whether it's thick with frass on the bottom and substrate on top, or just straight substrate, whatever's in there, it's going to hold in heat a lot easier. And so it's just a thing to monitor if you're going to run your trays a little deeper. But 1 to 2 inches should be just fine. 2 is kind of the top. And what that allows you to do is load that substrate in and then leave it be, right? If you've got time restrictions or you're not able to check them as frequently, that could be something you could try to get away with. And just be mindful of that temperature, because as they get older and as they get bigger, they're going to move around and generate more friction, more heat. And then the center of that, both the center of the tray, side to side as well as vertically, you want to make sure that that's not getting too hot. So hopefully that was. Let me go double check to make sure I hit everything. Do you need a lot of bedding in order to keep them alive? 300,000 worms. Yep. I think that'll get you set well, Matthew. It's like with the young ones, the deeper substrate is also going to be more work for them to get to the top, to get moisture once you start feeding that. Like here, whenever we spray the tops, if it was really, really thick, they'd have to use energy to go up as opposed to use energy to grow. So there's a trade-off though, right? Like I used to travel a whole lot. I'd be gone maybe 50 to 70% of the month. And what I would do is I would get trays topped off before I went so that they had enough to eat. And that was just one of the risks I was running. But as long as you're mindful of that and you keep track of it, it shouldn't cause an issue. All right. I'm hoping the rain holds off until we are done here and I can get those trays into the farm. They weren't supposed to be here till later, but here we are. All right, keep the questions coming, guys. What do you do for moisture? So right now what we do is I give water gel crystals to the larger mealworms, probably after about 4 to 6 weeks, depending on the trays and how they're looking. We'll start water gel crystals, and we give that to the beetles as well. And then on the younger trays, starting at 1 week after swap, we'll spray them with water. So I have an ATV sprayer, and it was hooked up to a tank, like one of those things that sits on the front or the back, and you've got a wand and you kind of spray whatever it is that you're ATVing around and spraying. I took one of those, and now I use a 55-gallon drum of water, so I don't have to refill as often, and I will just spray the top 3 times a week. And then same thing with the water gel crystals. I do that 3 times a week as well. Before I use water gel crystals, I would use potatoes or carrots, whatever I could get that was cheapest. And I used a French fry cutter, just a standard generic restaurant French fry cutter. You want to make sure you get one that's good quality, because if you're going to start cranking through it, you want something that's not going to break apart, and it's going to last for a while. So I would run the potatoes through that, because you don't want to just like cut a potato in half and throw it in a bin. The downside, I mean, you could, but the downside is that you're not exposing as much surface area. And so it's going to be harder for those mealworms, especially in a densely populated bin. It's going to be harder for them to each get enough of that. And so by exposing more surface area and kind of tossing that across the bin, you're giving everyone more of an opportunity in that tray to be able to get some moisture. So when I'm putting veg in, it's only for moisture. Do they actually get nutrients from veg? They do get nutrients from the veg, but they don't need it. Mealworms do just fine on wheat bran and water gel crystals. The average time here is about 2 to 2.5 months from when we do the beetle swap to when we harvest that tray and get harvestable mealworms. Some of the mealworms in that tray do take a little longer to grow, just because of the variance we have of a 1-week egg laying schedule. An egg laid on day 0 of when that tray is swapped versus an egg on day 6 or 7, depending on how you want to look at that. There's going to be a big difference at the end of that once they're grown. And so we do recycle or re-put them back into the colony if they're not harvested, and they stay in there and grow some more. I am a firm believer that if you give them more nutrients, they will be able to grow faster. But the downside to that is the cost of those inputs needs to be evaluated to see whether it's worth it, right? So a lot of it depends on what your goals are. So my goals are to crank out as many good high quality mealworms as I can and keep the business going growing for both the employees here and for the folks that need the mealworms. And it's also my feeling that feeding them water gel crystals is not detrimental to their health, and that whatever is in those water gel crystals is gone and out of their system by the time one of the customers receives them and gets them to use them, and then they can feed them whatever they want their particular reptile, poultry, etc. to have whenever those creatures then eat the mealworms. But I do think what I would like to get to is to be able to feed not water gel crystals and figure out a method for that that allowed those goals to happen. If you're running a 100% purely organic and you don't want any outside inputs, veg all the way, right? So take your vegetable scraps from the garden. As long as it's not moldy and rotting, you can utilize that within a mealworm farm. Works out really well. I find the balance between adding veg and controlling mold growth is a bit tricky. My worms are very young. Yes, so always add less moisture than you think. You're gonna feel like you're depriving them. It's gonna feel, as somebody who's taking care of a creature, you're gonna feel like you're doing something wrong by not giving them more moisture. But what's really happening is if you give them all that extra moisture, it's going to mold and that's going to harm them. So start off like with our very young mealworms. Like I said, the first week, they don't get any moisture. So after we do that beetle swap and that tray is just sitting there, those babies are hatching, we don't spray that tray at all. We don't give any moisture, no veg, no spraying, no water gel crystals, nothing. Like I said, the humidity is right now at 50%. And so mealworms can pull humidity out of the air as long as it's above, I want to say like 30 or 40, somewhere in there. And so they're not going to die in that week. And then after a week, we will spray the top of that. So that's week 2 to week 5 or 6. As we go down those trays and they get older, we spray a little bit more, right? So you could say that like a spray on a new tray that's only a week old is shh, and then a spray on an older tray is shh, right? And then the rest are somewhere in between. What you could experiment with is instead of throwing food in there, using veg, you want to keep in mind that like a tomato is going to have way more moisture than broccoli, right? I'm trying to think of one that I'm probably going to get pretty correct there. But the message I'm trying to get across is that some fruits and veggies are going to have more moisture than others, right? And so when you add 10 grams of potatoes versus 10 grams of broccoli versus 10 grams of tomatoes, you're going to have a different water moisture level. And so that takes a little bit of time to get used to. If you can pick something and be consistent and see how the trays are responding to it, that'll give you a better idea of, when you throw in a tomato, I got to put less of that in, right? The other thing you could experiment with on a smaller scale is just a spritzer, regular water bottle spritzer, and kind of just put some sprays on top of that tray. Don't overdo it. Your goal is to have all that moisture gone within 24 hours. Whether they consume it or it evaporates out and it's gone, it needs to be gone in 24 hours. That way they're either eating it and consuming it all, or it's going away and not having a chance to mold. The thicker substrate, that's another good potential hazard to be wary of, is that in a thicker substrate, if you put a potato slice on there, even if it's a slice of potato, chunk of potato, whatever it is, as they eat it, it's going to fall down into that substrate. And if you don't catch it, or you think that they've eaten it, that thing could then become a potential source of mold as well. So, very young. I've been using spaghetti squash and found some bran clumps on the bottom side. Yes, so bran clumps are indicative of too much moisture and it's clumping that bran together. So just feed a little bit less. If your mealworms aren't like massively dying right now, you don't need to worry about a huge mold outbreak or a big problem. I would remove the clump. I would take that out, and then just add less spaghetti squash, or separate your frequency out, right? If you're doing it more than once a day, that might be too much for the tray. Add a little bit, come back later and see how it's going. Your younger trays are going to go through your moisture sources slower than your older trays. And so there's some adaptation that you'll have to pay attention to there as well. I'm a little confused. How much mealworm do you collect from one tray? Oh, I did not see that that comment there. Let me see if I can pull it up here. How much mealworms do you collect from one tray without separation of big and small? How much feed do you provide them? How many weeks until they are ready for sale? I found shit. Okay, so let me tackle that. So that was Velazar. How many mealworms do you collect from one tray? I have no idea. So I don't document the total weight of that tray in mealworms because I don't find it to be a useful data point yet. We would have to like the processing of figuring out how much each one of those each of those things weighed would be just very time consuming. Maybe with our extra time that we'll have once the sifter's working, maybe that makes sense to do. But what I'm calculating is our harvested number of mealworms per month is what I'm collecting as a data point. So I don't know how many I collect from each individual tray. And the reason I also don't think that that's beneficial, Velazar, is that I've got beetle trays where some of them are 6 weeks old and some of them are 1 week old. And I'm going to get different amounts of eggs in each one of those. And so to keep track of those all the way down the line, it's a lot of work. And so I haven't had a need to track that just yet, but it's definitely something that I want to look into in the future. And then, sorry, I just wanted to make sure that I was still live and running there. I gotta hit them more again. How much do you feed them? Right now it's we upped it to 1,000 grams. So we put 500 grams of weight of substrate in with the beetles, and then whenever we separate, so we separate the beetles out, put that 500 grams back in, or whatever it is, the beetles have eaten a very little amount of it. We'll add another 500 grams in there to let the tray have enough to get it to the harvestable state. We found that when we fed less than that, we had to go and add feed in, and it was just more time than it was worth. So we're adding more in at the time that we swap the trays. How many weeks until they're ready for sale? About 8 to 10, roughly. And that's the first time we'll do the sift on it. So there might be multiple sifts as we get the smaller ones. I just found trays on which I gave them 2 kilograms of feed, and after 18 weeks, get around 800 grams, different sizes. Yeah, the different sizes, I think, is a normal thing. I think unless you're going to swap every day, you're going to have a variance in sizes. All right. Marie, what do I use for moisture? Water gel crystals right now. I think I tackled that one. Matthew, I can't find wheat bran here. A lot of times wheat bran is difficult to find. It's really I was gonna say sketchy, not sketchy. It's sporadic, spotty, as far as what feeds are available where, and at what quantities too. I mean, if you're buying in 1,000 pounds at a time, then that's a different scenario. You can likely talk somebody into ordering that for you. But if you're talking about 50 pounds once a month, they're less inclined to deal with that. Spaghetti swash. Velazar. Frass is 100 grams moisture, around 140 grams per week, starting progressively at week 4. Donna, is it okay to put the newly morphed beetles in with the older beetles, or will they be eaten or hurt? Cannibalism is always a potential, regardless of age, right? Like if you've, even in just a beetle bin with the same age beetles, there's the potential for cannibalism. With the newly morphed, they're going to be softer, right? Because they haven't hardened up yet. So those are always a potential target, because you don't have to use as much energy to eat those, to put it kind of crassly. And so there's the potential for that, but to decrease the likelihood of that, keep your beetles and your mealworms, moisturized, make sure that they've got enough moisture and there's humidity in the air. And then that way they're not purposely going to, like if they're starving and they need moisture, they're more likely to cannibalize. But otherwise, not a problem to do that. I haven't noticed any humongous, die-offs or problems of them eating each other. And oftentimes what will happen here is we'll have, when we collect beetles, so we have pupation trays, where we collect all the pupa using the pupa sifter, and then we put those into a tray and put paper towels on top. And then 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we'll go and we'll collect those freshly hatched beetles. Monday, those go out in orders, and then Wednesday and Friday, we're collecting to replenish and build the colony. And what we'll do is oftentimes, we need 150 to 170 grams of beetles, and if we have 40 left over of freshly hatched, I'll take those and just kind of sprinkle them across multiple trays, and they go in and they adjust. And I haven't seen an enormous death rate from doing that by introducing younger beetles in with older beetles. Marie, any pearls of wisdom regarding the use of agar? Is that the same as moisture gels? Do a search in the group. We just had, I can never remember if it was Sue or Glenda, one of the all-stars in this group has been playing around with carrots and agar. And of course my internet's not working because it's dedicating all of the bandwidth to this live. But go search for agar in the group, Marie. There's a search bar that should be somewhere up at the top. And just search for agar. And then what I've been noticing lately is Facebook is presenting me with just random, like I don't know how it's sorting it initially. So if you sort it by most recent, that should get you some of the more recent posts that have been put out there with some really good in-depth information on how they're making it, why they're doing it, what results they're seeing. Agar is very similar to the water gel crystals, except that my understanding is that it comes from a natural source, whereas water gel crystals are a man-made thing, right? But the other thing is I think agar has to be cooked, heated up, whereas the water gel crystals don't. So that's one of the differences, but from a, like operational perspective or usage perspective, it's a very similar concept. It creates like a jelly type substance, that you can toss in that's not going to drown the insects. It's going to give them a source that they can eat that and then get the moisture, that they need out of it. Oh, what time is it? 1:37. We're going to the top of the hour. I know it's past, but again, we started late because the delivery showed up earlier than they were supposed to. So I'll have to go back and look and see if those earlier ones got posted. There was one oops there when the trays fell onto the tractor, but overall nobody got hurt, which is good, right? Matthew, I have a bin with a screen on the bottom with beetles in it. How often do I need to change the bottom bin for a new one to catch eggs? So as far as, and this really applies to whether you're using the mesh method like you are, Matthew, or if you're just swapping your beetles out by separating the beetles out, putting the substrate back in, and then starting a new tray with those beetles. The amount of time to do that beetle swap is wholly dependent on how many trays you have and how much space you have. And you'll have different results. Like if you did it every day, so let's start with, like max scenario every day. I guess you could do every hour, but once a day, you do that once a day and you're going to have very consistent egg lifespan, amount of time that the egg has been there. And so they'll start hatching at the same time. You'll get a higher likelihood of having a more even distribution of size of larvae as they get older. Theoretically, I haven't personally done this yet, but my thought is that because they're closer in age from an egg perspective, you're going to have less variance down the line. So now spread that out to once a week. So you've got eggs that are going to be laid across that span. What you get as a result is down the line, you're going to have harvestable mealworms, larger mealworms that need to be separated out, and younger ones that still need to go through some more growth. Then spread that out to once every 2 weeks. Exact same thing, but you're expanding it out, right? And so ultimately, you do probably create a bit more work later on by having, doing once a week, once every 2 weeks. But from a space perspective, your beetles are going to lay eggs for 2 to 3 months on average, depending on environment and all that fun stuff. But they will lay 95% of their eggs within the first 2 to 3 months of their lives. And so if you do one beetle swap per week for 3 weeks, for 3 months, sorry, so that's 12 weeks, you're going to have 12 trays from that one tray of beetles. If you don't have 12 trays, then don't do one swap per week. So for every beetle tray that you've got going, if you're swapping once a week, you're going to have that start to accumulate and start to stack up. I did once every 2 weeks, and I established the business in 2017, I think. Yeah, January 2017, and I did beetle swap every 2 weeks for years, running and selling mealworms, and everything was fine. Didn't have any issues. outside of the sizing variance, right? And so sift and sort and harvest and do that separation. But even at once a week, which we're doing here, now we still have that scenario where we have larger mealworms we need to get out of there because they're going to start to pupate, and we still have younger worms that need to grow. So I would suggest, like, even with your method, Matthew, of mesh on the bottom, it's still that same principle, right? Of putting fresh substrate and swapping that out. So just be mindful of how many trays, how much space you have, what you want that production to be. And, I would suggest, every 2 weeks, from a time perspective too, doing it once every 2 weeks is not going to hurt anything. And especially with the screen on the bottom, you're reducing cannibalism. There will be some, right? Because they're going to lay some of those eggs up in that substrate. But ideally, you're going to have less because those eggs are either falling through or they're hatching and going down. So, really good question, Matthew. Marie, on some beetles I see black dome-shaped shiny dots. What are those? I don't know. Black dome-shaped shiny dots. Black dome-shaped shiny dots. I don't know. I'm trying to think through my head here of if I've seen anything. Do you see it on just some of your beetles? I don't know if there's a male-female thing there. I think all that's on the tail end, if I remember correctly. I'm not sure. Marie, if you're comfortable with it, could you take a picture of what you're seeing and maybe post it to the group so that we can get more feedback on it? Or you can send it to me if you want to. DM me here on Facebook or Justin at MidwestMealworms.com just to get a visual of what it is that you're seeing there. But nothing comes to mind. Top of mind here. Donna, I saw something using felt for the beetles to lay eggs on. Will they still lay eggs on the bottom of the tray? Is it worth it or not? So anything you put in that tray is potentially going to get eggs on it, but that's not going to stop them from laying eggs elsewhere. What I've seen folks in the past do with various things going into the tray, there's a few different reasons. So one of the very popular items, Donna, is egg cartons. And what's good about that is in a smaller tray, even any tray really, but usually I see this in smaller trays, like the Aldi Special or the Sam Special with the colored trays that stack. You could get more production out of that tray if you put an egg carton in it, because then there's more surface area for the beetles to climb around on. And so what that does, it's like putting a playground in there for them, but it gives them physically more space so they're less densely populated. And that way there's less cannibalism, you're going to get higher production because you'll have more beetles and more eggs and all that fun stuff. The felt, and the other thing I've seen along with like either felt pieces or cardboard, like cardboard cut into pieces and stacked up and put in, is to give a safe harbor for the eggs and the babies to hatch and be in, and not like the mandibles of the adults can't get into that cardboard to eat the babies. Same principle with the felt. It gives them something else to connect onto. They probably will see it as a nice cozy little home, but I don't think it's going to stop them from putting eggs anywhere else in the tray. The downside is that it's another thing to have to mess with when you do your beetle swap and maintenance processes. So you're going to have to, pick up the piece of cardboard, make sure you get all the beetles off of it, put it in that tray once the beetles are out of it. Same thing with the cardboard, although that's a very quick, slap the cardboard and they'll fall off or get knocked off, and then you put that in there. So it's not like it's going to add hours to your processing time, and especially in a scenario, Donna, where you've got a small amount of physical space. It's a good way to increase your beetle count in a tray without overpopulating them and cannibalizing. Marie, I'll post. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Curious to see that. There's been a lot of action in the co-op group lately. Lots of really good posts, lots of experiments going on. It's really awesome to see. I've been sort of quiet as folks have been posting and commenting. I've been looking over things, but you guys have been running things pretty well, so I haven't gotten in there and messed around with anything. But I do try to respond when I can. So we've got a good little community going, and it's fantastic. Donna, thank you. Yes, you bet. You bet. All right, folks. All right. So, just as a reminder, we're going to go till top of the hour. So we've got another 15 minutes left. The farm is not currently in use. So if we want to go in there and see anything, we definitely can. Yeah. I've got a little bit of work to do after this to get those trays in from outside. I don't think it's raining yet. Hopefully the tractor seat doesn't get wet before I sit on it. But kudos to the Beacon Camp folks. I actually ordered these trays from tricycle.eco up in Canada. I've talked about them before. I actually found them through this group. Thank you guys for posting and connecting me with Alexis. So I ordered, this is my second order, I think, from Alexis. Ordered 2 pallets and then ordered 3 more, and they just showed up here. So all is well there. Continued thumbs up for the folks up in Ontario, is where they are located. Ontario, Canada. Got a couple orders that I need to get done today. Had some dehydrated mealworms for... I've been playing around with cryptocurrency and NFTs from a business perspective, just to get some experience and exposure to it and figure out if there's any benefits that can help us all here. And one of the things that I did was I did some dehydrated mealworm sales just to kind of test the waters and see what was out there. So got one order, 2 pounds of that going out today. Not a normal thing for me to carry though. So the dehydrated mealworms are not cost effective to produce. The revenue stream from selling live mealworms is much higher. I flat out can't compete with the overseas prices of dehydrated mealworms. So Brandon, earlier you mentioned pulling pupa and dead mealworms out of your trays. Once you sift out pupa, how are you sifting dead mealworms from live ones? Are you using the egg carton method? I don't use the egg cart method, but I also don't pull out the dead ones. So let's go take a look at a tray of pupation, or a pupation tray, as it were. The reason I don't take the dead out is that they're not like mushy, gross. They dry pretty quickly, and might actually get cannibalized a bit once they die by the mealworms. But we are not pulling out the dead ones whenever we make those pupation trays, because we haven't noticed a detrimental impact to anything. So, turn this around. Things are a little bit of a mess here because I did not get things cleaned up. This was all my fault. So we have pupation trays, that whole tower, black tower there, the double black tower behind, and then all 5 of these. There's 5, 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5. All of those, or no, this one's not pupation tray. Sorry. All the rest of them are. And what we've got in here, as you can see right off the bat, there's dead ones in here. So these guys are going to die. And they're not harming anything. They're not hurting anything. And so they're just in there. We don't mess with it. They don't stink. It's not like they smell horribly, horribly bad. And we're in an external building that's running its own air exchange, etc. So we don't actually pull out individual dead ones. And what's also probably happening here is we're probably having some of these larvae die because of lack of moisture, because we don't feed these as often from a moisture perspective, because I don't want to hurt the pupa that are in here. I think we do these 2 to 3 times average, 2 to 3, somewhere in there, whereas the rest of the farm is definitely 3, sometimes 4 if I'm in here on a weekend. So we'll take, like I said before, like here's where all the pupa are, right here in this tray. And I'll just start grabbing handfuls out of there and then make a pupa tray. And what that does is leave us the rest that's harvested already that we can then sell. So, Marie, I tried dehydrating a few worms and they just turned black within a few minutes. Are they still nutritionally valuable when they are black? I don't know. So what I do know is that when you dehydrate mealworms in an oven, they are prone to turn black because the oils that are in them will transition to that black scenario. Whereas if you do like a freeze dryer or a microwave, it doesn't go to that black color. Whether or not it's nutritionally as dense or still has all of that stuff in there, I honestly don't know. My inclination would be to say that probably not, right? Like if you've cooked that thing to the point where the oils are now burning and turning black, I have to think that changes something. But I honestly don't know. I haven't researched that much into it because from a customer base perspective, I'm not selling the dehydrated mealworms. And so I haven't had to go into depth on that, Marie, to see like what happens with that. So I honestly am not sure. Unfortunately, I don't know. All right. Sorry, my inclination is to always depart that room. I'm still getting used to the inkbird being in there and having the air low enough that I don't have to wear the mask all the time, only when we're actually working or if it hasn't been exhausted. Maria, I used a dehydrator so the max setting was 165 but didn't take long to turn color. Really? Well, I guess that's the same principle as what I was thinking with the oven, right? Like you're using slow, low heat to dehydrate them, and that will that's where the black color came from that I've heard is doing them in the oven. It's been years and years since I did that personally myself, but I think the same thing happened. If I cooked them long enough to dehydrate them appropriately, then they were a blackish kind of color. It was just visually unappealing, but when I tasted them, it still tasted fine. It didn't taste like, like when you burn popcorn, right? Like some people really love that, some people don't, but when you burn popcorn, it's a different taste. But the mealworms didn't taste burned. Those oils had just been cooked, but I don't know what that did to the nutritional value of the mealworms. So I have a microwave dehydrator, and really the only reason I have that is several years ago, there was a company in Texas that decided to transition their business from raising mealworms. They did it for 2 or 3 years just to get familiar with it, to understand it, to be able to talk the talk in their industry. But their ultimate goal and passion was to get into protein shakes and whatnot. And so they liquidated all of their farming mealworm raising equipment. And so that's where I got all my original trays, the blue trays. But I also got the dehydrator and a couple grinders. It was an absolute steal from my perspective. And so I have that microwave dehydrator that I use maybe once or twice every few months, if that. And I honestly don't know, like I haven't done an immense amount of research into freeze-dried mealworms versus microwave mealworms versus oven or slow-cooked, slowly dehydrated mealworms, and the nutritional value, shelf life benefits. I haven't gone into that. What I've done is I've decided to keep that mealworm dehydrator, microwave dehydrator, from a business perspective, just in case the opportunity arose to utilize it. Like if I was raising too many live mealworms and couldn't sell them, rather than continuing to feed them and keep the like the upkeep and the maintenance and all that, rather to put more cost into them, I could have that microwave available to dehydrate and then have more shelf stable product for longer. Even though that would be taking a hit from a revenue perspective, it's at least getting something back instead of nothing. So I haven't had to use it yet. I've had good demand on the live mealworms, which is fantastic. And so I just haven't done the amount of research that is probably necessary to really figure out what's, air quotes here, what's best, right, for either my business, the consumer, and the various different paths that folks would want to go down. Tricycle.eco is in Quebec. Who is in Ontario that I'm thinking of? Maybe that's the other. There was another one Bryce mentioned last time. I don't know if that was you or somebody else that mentioned there was a place. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of in Ontario that's also sells those trays. And then I did have somebody reach out to me recently and let me know that there was a U.S. supplier. I got real excited because I thought, oh, that's awesome. I reached out to them, and turns out they're just a throughput for Beacon Camp. That all they did was turn straight around and go to Beacon Camp and say, what's the cost and when can it be here? And so they said, your shipping container from Beacon Camp will arrive in 6 to 9 months. And I said, no, I can order from them directly. So haven't found a U.S. supplier yet. Marie, thank you for your time. You bet. I'm sorry for the rough start today. I planned accordingly, doing this thing at 12:30. My delivery was not supposed to be here till 3 o'clock this afternoon or tomorrow. So yeah, that was interesting. But we've got another 5 minutes here, and we'll close things out. And I have not looked at the next scheduled one, the next scheduled Mealworms and More for the co-op group. It'll probably be, I want to say, like Tuesday, Wednesday next week. Try to shake it up on days and times to give folks opportunities to come in. And we do need to do another one for our Australian folks as well. So I'll get that timed out. I believe we did one late in the day. Might do it early in the morning just to mix things up and maybe hit their late evening. So it was great seeing behind the scenes. Yeah, while I am going to go back and look at those, I did not hit the post option afterwards, so I don't know if the recording's still out there. I'll have to go look at that. I want to get the one where the trays fell at me. That'll be interesting. Tonk Lee, I hope I'm saying that right. Tonk Lee, let me know if I'm not. Hi from Slovenia. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Glad you're here. That's one of the things I really like about our co-op group is that we have folks from everywhere, and what that does is it gives us a really good opportunity to exchange ideas and to kind of solve and learn different things as we go. You know, I've learned quite a bit from our friend Velazar here on all different aspects of this. He did warn me ahead of time about the pupa not doing well in higher humidity, but I'm a little bit stubborn. Not that I thought he was wrong. Sometimes I want to do those things and be able to have hands-on 100% affirmative. I saw this happen, but I do remember that distinctly, Velazar. Planning clipping that for TikTok. If you find it, let me know. That's one of the things, Wally, I want to try to do a little bit better is to grab some of the things in all the various posts that I see. And you know, like an hour is a lot to take in, but if we can get little snippets of the good stuff, I don't know if anybody is interested in doing that or wants to try that out, to take video clips and segment out the individual pieces. Like we had some good pieces here today on the pupa discussions, the pupa sifter, different options that we went through. If we could grab those bits and pieces and build a repository, I think that would be awesome. It's a time problem for me personally. There's just a lot going on. All right. If anybody has any last minute questions they want to throw out there, please do so. This will be posted to the co-op group along with all the comments that are in there. So if I missed any there that I didn't address or didn't tackle, I'll go back through and look at those. And so this will be posted to the group's profile. And then I'll also take this and post it to YouTube as well. There are folks there that requested. I did a couple lives there, and they like the content and the format, so I take this and put it over there so that the folks who don't have Facebook can go see it there as well. The comments don't come through outside of me just verbalizing them. And then I'll get another one of these scheduled so we can do that again. Hopefully, I don't have any trays getting delivered next week, so fingers crossed there won't be any issues starting out with me driving on a tractor. Probably more nerve-wracking for me than it was for you guys. But thank you guys for sticking around after the rough start. If you guys need anything, please let me know. And I hope you have a really good afternoon, evening, or morning, wherever you're at. Thank you very much, and have a great day.